New characters have been introduced in just about every single Mortal Kombat game. It's almost a staple of the series at this point. In this video in particular, I'm going to be looking at all the characters that were essentially one and done. They debuted in one Mortal Kombat but never returned for another Mortal Kombat. Now I'm only counting mainline entries in the franchise. We're not counting Unchained or Tournament Edition. Those don't really count. And I'm also not counting Armageddon. So if they debuted in a prior game to Armageddon and then were on Armageddon, yeah, that doesn't count either because that game's whole gimmick was including every character, so that doesn't matter. And we're not going to count guest characters, we're not including cameos, and we're not including anybody that's debuted in Mortal Kombat 11 since, well, they haven't even had an opportunity to sit out a game yet. So that being said, maybe these characters will get their second chance in Mortal Kombat 12. Let's take a look. Everyone from Mortal Kombat 1 through 3 have returned as playable characters, so we'll be skipping ahead to Mortal Kombat 4. When people say they want 3D era characters back due to their lack of representation, this very topic is why I count Mortal Kombat 4 when I discuss the 3D era characters. Their return rate is not great. In Mortal Kombat 4, we have 8 new characters, 4 of which who have yet to return, and they are Jarek, Kai, Mi, and Reiko. Jarek serving as the Kano clone for Mortal Kombat 4 already put him in a rough spot, as typically you have to reinvent him a bit in order to warrant his inclusion over Kano, who at this point makes almost every game's roster, so his chances are a bit slim, I'd say. Kai, on the other hand, feels like he has a lot of great potential, and he was slated to return in subsequent games, but for some reason has gotten cut each time. I'm not sure what his chances are, but he'd be a welcomed inclusion and is a great candidate for a second chance. I'd say the same about Reiko. It feels odd that he has yet to return. He had a prominent role in the comics leading up to Mortal Kombat X. I feel with Ed Boon's Reiko hype tweet, I think his odds are high to return for Mortal Kombat 12, finally conquering his own second chance in this franchise. The wild card here is Meat. He's a joke character, but perhaps they want to see him fleshed out a bit more. Pun very much intended. At the very least, perhaps he comes back as a skin of some sort. Moving on to Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, we have a whopping 10 new characters, 6 of which who have yet to return, and they are Blaze, Draman, Suhao, Mavado, Mocap, and Natara. Blaze was of course the boss in Armageddon, so maybe he gets a slight pass here, otherwise he's been pretty much MIA. No idea on what his chances are, and he's not one brought up by the devs or fanbase much at all, so it's hard to say. Draman, I would like to see return, but unfortunately Ed has claimed he does not see him coming back as a playable fighter, so I'd imagine his chances have been squashed. It seems as though Suhao is pretty much seen as a joke by the devs and most fans, so I can't imagine his second chance is coming anytime soon, if ever, which is a shame. He could have been salvaged, but alas, it's likely not happening. Mavado is a bit of a toss-up. I feel there's some potential there, especially if we're ever going to have the Red Dragon return, as has been teased for a bit now, but I'm not sure there's many clamoring for his return either. His gameplay feels like it could be more fun in a 2D environment, I'll say that much. Mocap is a joke character, and while I'd love to see him in Johnny Cage's moveset, but I don't think he needs to be an individually playable fighter on the roster. And lastly, we have Natara, who I think has a decent shot at a second chance in the franchise. She's one fans have brought up over the years, and she's been featured in other media like the recent live action thing that was released, as well as in the last animated film. If she's going to return, I think Mortal Kombat 12 feels more likely than not. On to Mortal Kombat Deception, we have 8 new characters, all 8 of which have yet to return. Yikes, that's by far the worst percentage thus far, which is kinda crazy when you realize most longtime Mortal Kombat fans hold Deception as one of their favorites in the series. Though, to be fair, the new characters likely aren't a big proponent of that, as they are Ashra, Dairu, Darius, Havoc, Hotaru, Kira, Cobra, and Shujinko. And you can toss Onaga in there too, which would make 9, but he wasn't playable. It's no secret that Ashra is one of my favorite characters, and the one I'm pulling for most when it comes to Mortal Kombat 12. There's a good amount of potential with her gameplay and story, and I think she's one fans have looked back on fondly. Unfortunately though, it's hard to say what her chances are, as she hasn't even cameoed in any of the last several games. Dairu and Darius are both ones that I feel the opposite about. Could they be salvaged? Of course, but for me, they're near the back of the line of characters I care to see get a second chance, and I don't really see them requested among the fanbase, so I feel their chances are pretty slim. Havoc, on the other hand, is one of, if not the most requested character who has yet to be given a second chance. Many were polling for him in Mortal Kombat X and Mortal Kombat 11, but to no avail. and he was heavily featured in the MKX comics as well as cameoed in multiple games' arcade endings. His chances feel very high, but of course, we've felt that way for a while now. Hotaru is a character I liked in Deception, but has gone on to be completely forgotten in subsequent games, much like Ashura. I think he'd make for a great samurai character in the series, but I can't say that I feel his chances of returning are great. Perhaps they'll surprise us? Kira was sort of in the Jarek role, where her moveset was a mashup of Kano and Sonya. I think she could be revamped to make her more unique. She's got a cool look, but outside of being featured in the recent animated movie Snowblind, I don't feel she has a lot of momentum in terms of fan demand or public interest expressed from the devs, so who knows if there's any potential there or not. Cobra I consider to be a dark horse. With Cobra Kai's popularity and NRS's love for Street Fighter, I think you could do something with Cobra to make him more like the series equivalent to Dan. But will they do it? I'm not sure. His chances feel low, but not without hope. Shijinko feels like he could come back depending on the story they want to tell. I think there's great potential in a wise old sage kung fu master like archetype in the series. Pai Mei, for example, was great in Kill Bill. And if they played that up more with Shijinko, he could be really cool. If they do bring him back, I'd like to see him using the techniques of other fighters in unique ways, rather than just doing exact copies of other characters' moves like before. He's at least cameoed in recent games, so I think his chances are neutral. As for Onaga, he could be a boss again. I think that'd be awesome. Unlike Blaze, Onaga doesn't feel super tied to one story direction, so I think his chances seem reasonable to make his triumphant return. Next up, we have Armageddon, which had 3 debuting characters if we're counting Serena's mainline playable debut, with all 3 having yet to return. They are Dagon, Taven, and Serena. Dagon feels like his odds are decent. He's been mentioned and cameoed in recent games. Taven feels like he has less going on and less potential story-wise based on recent games, but I wouldn't say it's completely out of the question to see him return. His odds just seem low. And then of course we have Serena. I've said before she's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Out of all of these characters, she feels the most due for not just a return, but rather a proper debut on a mainline entry roster that isn't an all-in game. She was in Mortal Kombat X's story mode and was in Cabal's Mortal Kombat 11 ending. You can tell she's on their mind. The fan demand for her is there. I think her odds seem high. We can then skip MK vs DC, and MK9 introduced one new character with Scarlet, who of course has returned, so moving on to Mortal Kombat X. With MKX, we have 10 new characters, which is a lot. And of those 10, 5 have not returned, and they are Ferritor, Kung Jin, Takeda, Tremor, and Triborg. I'd like to see Ferritor come back. I thought they were an interesting concept, and if I remember correctly, Ed Boon said they were his favorite new character. Their chances seem okay based on that alone, but they may have been one of the least liked new characters, so perhaps the demand just isn't there. Kung Jin and Takeda's chances likely heavily depend on where the story goes from here. Their inclusions were there to fit a narrative direction of a new generation of combatants, and if we end up rebooting the franchise again and going back however many years, I could see them being saved as non-canon DLC or something, so I think their chances are hard to gauge. Tremor's odds feel good. He was well received, and Ed said it was very, very likely that we'd see Tremor return, so perhaps he follows Scarlet's path and sits out the game after his debut, which was MK11, then returns for the main roster in the next one, Mortal Kombat 12. Triborg, yeah, Triborg, man, I'll tell you straight up, with Cyrax being my favorite character, I really did not like Triborg. It's not a bad character concept, and the execution wasn't bad. I just don't like the idea of a mashup of characters and relegating them to variation names for a hybrid character like that. It was highly disappointing for me personally, so I don't want to see him return if it means the likes of Cyrax, Sector, and Smoke sit out. But personal feelings aside, Ed did say Triborg was his favorite of the cyborgs, so who knows, anything could happen. And there you have it, those are all the characters that have yet to return for a Mortal Kombat game. It's crazy to think how many there are. Make sure you let me know in the comments below which ones of them you would like to see most in Mortal Kombat 12 to finally get the second chance that they've been waiting for. And while you're here, I would appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed. I would hate for you to miss any of the content that we're producing leading to Mortal Kombat 12, and we've been around for over 8 years. We've been doing this for a long time. We would love to have you as a part of our community, so make sure you check out the Discord in the description. We have a wonderful community talking daily, such as myself, as well as everybody else on this channel. So check that out, and you're going to have a great time. Leading into Mortal Kombat 12, we're putting out weekly videos just like this, as well as podcasts. So make sure to keep tuning in. I will see you all on the next one.